Hello. Welcome. My name is Imogen, or two-thirds Lotus. And we're live. We're live. I didn't think I was going to make it today. I woke up like 45 minutes ago because I had band practice last night that started at 9 p.m. Why do we start band practice at 9 p.m. with our punk band? That's not cool. That's not cool. So I'm very tired. Cause you go out, you like have a great time playing music and like writing songs and practicing stuff. And then like after that I have all this energy. So then I can't fall asleep for another like 3 hours once I get home. And then I fall asleep at like 3 a.m. And then I need to sleep like 8 hours. And then it's 11 a.m. and I'm streaming in an hour, and so annoying, so annoying. Um, 8 p.m. is too early, 10 p.m. is too edgy. Maybe. Unfortunately, 8 p.m. is too early for one of our band members, and that's the thing. They work until 8:30, which sucks. I mean, they're really cool, so they get a pass, I guess. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely a toll on the everything in the brain. And hi Nikki, hi Bushka. Uh Welcome. Glad to have you here. um yeah, so that's where my brain's at right now. The other place my brain's at is that I'm thinking I have all these ideas bouncing around in my head for a D&D character, or not a D&D character, like an RPG character, because it's for my friend's campaign and he made his own system and like role-playing RPG system. And I'm really stoked about this because um I haven't played an RPG in quite a while. It's been like a year because I sort of like left the group for a while, and with a lot of the things I've been thinking about artistically and just in my life where I'm at, I feel like I'm more inclined, willing, able to like just be in a D&D group. Because that's sort of like a commitment kind of thing, right? And I've been working on this character. I I've been making a language because it's this sci-fi world, and it's this very big galaxy. So uh, the DM Tim, he has like all these big ideas about the politics and about the overarching stuff, but then the details of like my little planet where my character comes from are not very detailed. So I get to kind of take as much free reign as I want with that, and I'm a at times I can be a pretty a horrible, not horrible, really uh, uh, just I world build a lot sometimes. I get very excited about that, and making languages is something I really enjoy. So I kind of had this challenge of he had like three of the star systems named in this, or in this sort of cosmic nation state, and so I'm like, these are all the rules I have for the language. I'm gonna build a language around the constraints of knowing these three words, and that's been an interesting process. So I've been very happy about that one. Uh, I love the title of today's stream. Yeah, I've been messing with the titles. Some of y'all have probably been noticing like the title is always a little bit different. I'm trying to find something to settle on. I just wonder, for a while it was like analyzing chat's poetry, right? And that's very concise. That's exactly what I do. But I wonder if anyone's going to click on, you know, something where the first word is analyzing. But you see a lot of like the YouTube videos, the video essays that are like my 3 hour over analysis of, right? And over analysis kind of has this like uh this lighter kind of uh sarcastic connotation, which, you know, I take the analysis seriously, so I'm not sure I actually like that word as much in a vacuum, but in terms of like the bowing down to the algorithmic, um, you know, I mean, Twitch doesn't have much of an algorithm, but bowing down to content and needing people to click on my stream, uh, you know, overanalysis is one of those kind of more fun words, and then chat's poems, not chat's poetry, I think is a little nicer. Um, so I think about that stuff, right, and tinker with it, but I do like I do like the title overall. I think it's a good balance. You think it's fun? Okay, awesome. um, and I always like I never like to take the idea of what I'm doing too lightly. Where like you know I'm reading people's stuff is very important to them. I want to like respect that. So I don't want to be like too you know tongue in cheek with how I present this because I do really like care deeply about you know what I'm doing and wanting to like respect people's art. So you know, it's trying to find a good balance, but I think like the sarcasm of over analyzing maybe also, you know, signals slightly differently that oh, it's a little more casual. And that's also what stream is supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be pretty chill because it's a Twitch stream. This isn't a classroom. But it's also supposed to be a place where like serious in-depth conversations can be had and and you know it finds a balance somewhere in between those two things, right? uh and that's it's a balance that you don't find in many places, I think, because like there aren't many venues of learning traditionally in society outside of the classroom, and the classroom is often very strict and very rules and very raise your hand to speak. Um, and you know, sometimes I see that in chat with people who will give some thoughts on the poem and be like, "Oh, but I don't want to," or like, you know, or can I say something about this? And it's like, well, yeah, like, um, you know, no one needs to ask those things. So the things I think about, obviously, to some extent, my brain's always going. I don't think I have any new poetry of mine since last stream, since I've been working on this RPG character. But something I like to do sometimes is to flesh out a character and to flesh out their history and like their their attitudes and stuff. I often write little short stories from their perspective or, you know, centering around them as a main character. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if in the coming days a short story pops up on the Substack or something about my sci-fi role-playing game character with you know featuring probably little snippets of the language I'm making because I'm just very compelled by that right now. I think it's really fun and it's something I haven't done in a long time. You do that too. That's awesome. So you're also a player of RPGs. That's good. I mean, I think lots. It's a pretty safe thing within like writing poetry circles to find, you know, theater people and to find RPG people and to find those sort of similar uh, nerdy hobbies, right? And I think any poet who hasn't played a tabletop role playing game is doing themselves a disservice because that sort of like improvised telling of stories is a really cool way to practice stuff and to become a better writer, right? Of course, it's also fun, right? I wrote a straight up folklore ballad about my paladin, dude. That's awesome. yeah, poetry as well within that context is very cool. Uh, my character, she comes from this background that's like hyper spiritual, and has these like intense psionic practices and like meditations associated with that. And I thought it would be really fun to write like some number of traditional proverbs, sort of poetic like within the language. But I would need to have much more of the language built out, and that does take time. Uh, to have her, be able to cite at certain times, which is really excessive. But I do think it's cool, and it, you know those placing those like most important teachings and proverbs also helps place, how this character approaches the world and how they think about stuff. And uh, I, especially lately, just really love the idea of, really getting into the head of the character. Sometimes I use the phrase, in many cases in life, but the phrase of becoming other people as something that is a worthwhile thing to do. I think empathy is a way to like become other people, to adopt some of their situation and think about that. And that can be a great way to, improve oneself and teach, teach oneself about others. And then role playing games are obviously an opportunity to, for a time become someone else, and even to treat a fictional character more so as a person. And like, how do I get into the head of this, character in such a way that I can, lift them up to the level of like humanizing them. And those are really like compelling, sort of just like practices in my mind. I think those are good things to be doing. I think like, if I have kids someday, which I hope to have kids someday. Uh, I wanna run D&D campaigns for them, because I think it's such a great way to teach these ideas of empathy, and also like communication and storytelling, and then like cooperation within multiple people, kind of getting along, right? Having to work together, dice, math, it's a really great thing. Welcome, Ishmael. Oh my God, my phone is out of charge. I don't know if God can help you with that, but a phone charger probably can, if I had to guess. Um, yeah. um, so I think we should like read something. I think we should read a poem, right? You've submitted a translated poem to Discord. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I tend to prioritize people who are new, right? And the poems from new people. And since the only other person around right now are people are Nikki and Ishmael, and we read Ishmael last stream, and Nikki we've read pretty recently, we could definitely read some Bushka poetry. I could get behind that. You have some cool art going on, which is a vibe I see. Is lucid dreaming acting? Acting, I I presume you mean in the sense of taking an action. I've thought about this at various times in my life. What is an action, right? That's a really um, fascinating question to me. Like, what does it mean to act? Uh, I've kind of heard ideas that like thoughts are in action, or that action is somehow physical, or those kinds of things. Um, and I don't think I've come to a good definition of of like what it means to act. But maybe one of y'all in chat has a compelling argument or idea. I don't know, in the very sort of Socratic dialogue kind of way. If I asked you what it means to act, um, I'm not sure though myself. Um, like there are a few ways we could go with that question, right? Like, is it something physical? Are all actions like maybe like the physical manifestation of thought, right? Uh, where it has to be rooted in a thought, but there's involuntary action, which isn't thought. So, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to necessarily come from intention or thought, unless that's where we draw the line. Mm. But I think an involuntary action, well, is like the heart beating an action. Probably not, right? We don't think of that as an action. I'm going down this rabbit hole. I'm gonna think about this. We don't have to talk about poetry just yet, because I'm always here for some light philosophizing. Ah, zoom this in. Right, what's an action? I mean, we have to define that first if we want to know if lucid dreaming is acting. Uh, and so we have these ideas of like physical, mental, intention, the question of something involuntary, whether that could be a component of action or whether that is not an action. I'm not sure. I don't know. Do we think like choosing to think through something is an action? Maybe, right? If I sit down, right, and I look at something and I sit there and I parse it and I really like mull over these things in my mind, I think I'm acting now because I'm like choosing to do that, right? I don't think it's strictly physical. I think it can be mental as well. And then I think it comes down to intention and the idea of like choice or perceived choice, right? Because one might argue that we don't have choice, but it's hard to argue that we don't think we have choice, right, as humans. So it's like when we think we're, choosing, we're acting, um, which, lucid dreaming is includes agency, right? You theoretically have control, right? When you're lucid dreaming, I've never lucid dreamed is one issue, so I don't have like an experiential reference for this, but as far as I know, it's a dream where you have agency. It's a dream where you have choice going through just like a dream world. Uh in which case, like within this like really rudimentary definition of action, uh, lucid dreaming would be, right? Uh, Choice and agency is like kind of an awkward thing to hinge this on because, like when you are forced to do something by someone else, um, arguably you don't have choice. I mean, you probably have choice. It's just there's a threat impacting your choice, right? Someone has a gun to your head and they say to give you the money. You do have a choice, right? You can like, start singing. You can walk away. You can give them the money. And just because there's like coercion and pressure doesn't mean you don't have choice, doesn't mean those are no longer actions. You do then have the issue of like, let's say you're like entirely like, I'm gonna try to poke holes in this argument. Let's say you're on like hella drugs, so you're like impaired. You are no longer present. Like that has been obliterated by crazy amounts of I don't know, one of the drugs, alcohol, let's say. So you're like blacked out and you're still doing things, you know, I don't know if we would define that as an action or not. That is an interesting, you know, um, consequence if we were to adopt that framework in terms of things like law, right? Which is often somewhere where like these philosophical ideas come to be implemented. Uh, like, did that person no longer choose to stab you when they were drunk? And then maybe you say, well, they chose to take all these drugs, right? That was a choice. So they're still like culpable for like stabbing someone while violently drunk. Uh, in which case, this doesn't have to be an action, and maybe law doesn't have to be based on voluntary action. So I think then it still kind of holds up. You just have to say that, you know, within this framework, maybe if you lose your mind but are still doing things, you're not acting, which might be sort of weird. I think that might not compute for some people. I have vivid dreams which feel lucid. That's freaking terrifying, honestly. I have a friend who has these really intense lucid dreams, um, and they're to the point where they like drove him mad. Like he also has like schizoaffective kind of stuff, and you know he got to the point where he hated these dreams so much because he would go to sleep and they would be like the best experiences he'd ever had. And he'd be with his friends and it would be loving and it would be caring. And he would spend like 8 hours together with, you know, me and our friend group in the dream worlds. And it would be like a wonderful experience. And then he'd wake up and that would be gone. Right. And he even told me a story once where I don't think I was there, but he was hanging out with some of our friends, and he made specific reference to an event that happened within his dream. He's like, "Do you guys remember when?" And it was something he had entirely like lucid dreamed. Uh, so I mean that that sent him to a very dark place. So I'm terrified of the idea of lucid dreaming, because I do think like being in that state would, you know, I might end up in similar frames of mind of like rather being there, you know. But I only dream extremely vaguely because I lack a strong ability to visualize, and it's strongest when I'm dreaming, but it's still extremely. Uh, I wouldn't say I see anything when I'm dreaming, you know? There's notions. It sucks when I have memories that aren't real. Freaking weird, dude. That would trip me up. Weird, not in a way like you're weird for that, but that sounds quite weird and uncomfortable. um, yeah. Ugh. uh, that was a good question, Ishmael. I mean, sort of, you know, not the normal stuff we talk about on stream, but these are always interesting uh, conversations to have and interesting things to parse through. So my answer, my tentative answer, is that lucid dreaming is an action, or I guess the actions within lucid dreaming are actions. If you're accidentally lucid dreaming, the entire framework of it is not something you chose to do. So it's not an action. If you laid down and chose to lucid dream, like I know there are people who like put their mind in a certain state and then like prime themselves to lucid dream, then the lucid dreaming itself would be an action, and the actions within the lucid dream would also be an action. Uh, there's like two ways to interpret that question. The other way to interpret the question is actually, is lucid dream acting, as in acting on a stage? But I don't think so. Definitely off-putting, I bet. Yeah, let's read a poem from Bushka. And this is dope. This has art going on with this dead guy in military stuff with a clock and a swan and a broken shield and another dead guy, and we're in the desert, and we have this like uh spirit lady kind of coming out from his death rattle, which is super cool and probably relates to a lot of the things happening in this poem. I like how this is formatted. It all fits really nicely on stream. Uh some of y'all should take notes. Look at this. It fits so nicely. um yeah, Noon by Bushka plays. Bushka, I will ask if you have any things you'd like to say before the poem, any context, any questions. Maybe you said something in the Discord. This poem is written in the Bengali language. Oops, I got rid of it. And it took me a few months to translate because it employed a lot of linguistic tricks specific to Bengali. So getting that similar tone in English took me a while. Well, I'm glad you took the time to do that. I think that's a really like admirable thing to do in within translation, is to like really try to capture it. I would love to hear any analysis on this. It's set during a fictional war set in the late 1800s between allied forces of the Spanish and French against an army of Indian, Chinese, Vietnamese soldiers. The setting is a European village. The story is of a warrior who shares a complicated relationship with his own memories and with time. Okay, so we have a sort of fictionalized war poem translated. Fictionalized war. We have a translation. We're hoping to capture some of that original sound, which I don't know Bengali, so I can't necessarily speak to whether, this poem will do that effectively. But we'll see, right? And yeah. What you say, late 1800s is kind of where we're at. Why is your 8 a 4? Why is your 8 a 4 on the clock? Why is your 8 a 4? What? My 8? My 8? That's not a 4. It goes 8. It just connects. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I guess my handwriting is we know this. We know this. My handwriting is not always the best. Unless I slow down and pay attention. Okay. Noon. For as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. Talk. The ghost of a metal presses cold on his ribs. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draught that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. For as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye. He broke in the dark. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. Talk. Night of the marrow, the earth was swaying. The girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. Talk. So with the iron in his lung, the right-handed soldier reaches with his left. The ink is his own. The poet returns to the circle at noon. Talk. Draw a cigar. tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open live. Evil and position. Revolt emerged, hell a lit, a gray, met lover. Talk. So we have this thing, this like really sort of interesting uh, fading feeling. I think is what I pick up where like this these last two stanzas, right? This language starts to get like much more like vague and evocative, right? The poet returns to the circle at noon, the ink is his own. Um, and then we have this like, no, it is open, live. We have this like linguistic thing happening where things are just like changing and getting sort of uh like weird, I would say, right? Revolt emerged, hella lit. What is that word? I'm gonna look that up. Egre, eager. um, and maybe this is like French again because we have that like um, we have alternate spelling of eager in English. Volt emerge, telelit, capital E, egret. It means a bird. Okay, and we have this like bird happening down here, so that does make sense. Um, and then we have like evil N position or position. Uh, it's a Bengali way of saying egret. Okay, excellent. Um, yeah, so we have these like coming back to that that language that is maybe like closer to this dying man, right? Uh, and so we say, right, for as he lay fading at noon, and as we get down to this end part, it becomes much more uh, vague, right? It becomes, it really like gets very um, yeah, vague and evocative is the phrase I usually like to use for things like this. But probably also like symbolic, right? We have this like nuts iris. We have this cigar. We have this like revolt thing. This lover, like all of these things coming in that just feel very like ethereal almost. They're just like these floating ideas. And I think this makes sense, right? Talk, period, right? That's the end of the ticking. It has a period, right? These prior talks have these M dashes as to imply continuing, as to imply, still having time. So as we draw closer to death, right, this thought process grows muddled, and I think that's a very effective idea, right? When we're talking about someone fading into death, as we describe in the very first, you know, very first stanza. Is chat coming in slow? I wouldn't know. uh, I never have an idea. Okay, so eager, and I'll say eager, is a Bengali way of saying egret. The last stanza took me a whole month. I will tell you why in a bit when you reach there. Absolutely, yeah. Call me Pee Pee. Welcome. Hello. Yeah. So we have this running out of time, this fading, this approach toward death, and we have these very like kind of some like regal ideas, right? Status king's wax, cigars, quills, medals, and again, like an award. Uh, and this fits right with this soldier stuff. And these ideas continue to come back, right? We have the quill and we have the ink. We have the cigar returning in this section. This like copper, right, which probably relates to something. Uh, Maybe the metal, right? We have the watch. Um, Knight of the Marrow, the Earth Swain, Girl from the Village. And then we have like this natural component, these lilies, this swan, this pool, this egret, right? So we have, or this eager. So we have like this interesting contrast that crops up against everything else. We have this regality, this royalty, this status, soldiers, these kinds of things, war. Uh, and that makes this stanza like pretty heavily stick out, and in some capacity the one at the end as well. Uh, but after a first read, I'm usually literally just reading the words. So I will read it again, maybe two more times, just to continue to pick up the vibes, right? It's good. I've been liking getting an overarching view of the poems before kind of diving in lately. Noon. For as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. I love that line. Talk. The ghost of a metal presses cold on his ribs. I like that as well. The metal is dead, right? We're characterizing these objects as other. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draught that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. For as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye he broke in the dark. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. Talk. Night of the Marrow. The earth was swaying. The girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. Talk. So with the iron in his lung, the right-handed soldier who reaches with his left. I like that line too. The ink is his own. The poet returns to the circle at noon. Talk. Draw a cigar. Tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open. Live. Evil and position. Revolt emerged, hell a lit, eager, met lover. Noon. Yeah, this last stanza is like deeply fascinating, right? And you say it's like it was the hardest one to translate. It has all of these like things happening in the original language which you're trying to capture uh within another language. And it's fascinating, right, when we look at translation, because I think, we look at a stanza like this last one, and it just feels like something that never could have been written originally in English, right? Like, there's so much going on, and the writing is happening in such a particular and peculiar way that it really stands out. And that's a cool thing about translation and translating work, is that things don't translate intuitively because languages are just fundamentally different. So when we when we do translate, not only are we taking something from another, cultural context, another way of speaking into our own, but we're also expanding the idea of the way, this expands the idea of what the way I think I can use the English language, right? Um, because like this is so free, right? In the way that this is using English. Would you like me to give you a tiny brief of the references without taking away from your very excellent analyses? Um, uh, I would say Bushka. If there are references that are specifically rooted in like the the you know Bengali cultural and linguistic context, then those are things that like I will never be able to put together, right? Okay, not really reference, but more of what the narrative is. It's not a cultural or a language thing at all. I think I think I'll take a little more time maybe to try to dig into what the narrative is um, on my own. Because I think I'm a long way from even I've only read the poem twice, right? I don't think I've ever had a good understanding of a poem after reading it twice, right? And um and it is nice, right? It's fun to engage with stuff without that sort of like explanation of what's going on, which I think is different maybe than like translation notes, for example. But yeah, so we have this last stanza that really feels like it brings you know everything like back together at the end. Uh, and it does feel like it's kind of referencing and pointing to everything. Uh, maybe, right? This this second stanza or third stanza, I guess we have a short couplet at the start. Definitely is one that like I'm still parsing, right? For as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye. He broke in the dark. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. Right? Really cool writing here. They're really like some of the way that this is telling this narrative. Like it has this, I think, like sort of non-linear sort of structure, um, where like this maybe feels in a sense like some sort of flashback. There's like the puzzle of putting together what this last stanza means. Uh, and you know, it's cool. But for as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye. He broke in the dark. So we have him crying, right? I think we can safely say that the wet of the eye he broke in the dark is a tear, is crying. Um, but for as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, this is something that we just like drop on the reader and doesn't necessarily get any additional amount of context, right? It's not necessarily explained. He's thinking of this split face. He cries. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. And I wonder, split face. We have this soldier. We have this person like fighting. We mention, a blade, right, ahead as well. And so perhaps he is killed, right? There's someone who he has killed. He is also, he's been shot maybe, right? He has iron in his lung. So he's dying, maybe I could think of this as him like regretting the actions that he's taken, the people that he's killed. The priest said nothing. He doesn't get any, holy sort of absolution. I think that's maybe the right word to use here. Um, and and I don't know about the screen still smells of copper. What screen we're referring to? Um, but yeah, the draft that broke his quill for a blade. So we have this soldier who I think was a poet before, right? The poet returns to the circle at noon. That broke his quill for a blade. He had to put down the pen, put down his peaceful, poetic sort of way to take up fighting, right? Remembers the king's wax, the draft that broke his quill for the blade, right? So he's been drafted to fight for his country, for this war, for a man who is, you know, above him. Uh, and that's, you know, that seems like probably the context of this person. Seems like he's thinking about a confessional. Yeah. The screen is what makes me think of confessional when combined with priest. Yeah, right. If we were to think of Christianity, and we do say priest, um, which I think within English, priest most points toward a Christian clergyman. Uh, I think as a translation note, if you want to point to something, you know, less Christian, um, I don't totally know. I mean, there's a whole bunch of religious stuff happening in uh, what Bangladesh, Bengali, uh, but you also said like soldiers from I think India, China, one other. Um, yeah, because they did get like colonized and stuff, and oh yeah, Christianity was brought very early by like Saint Thomas in like really early. Yeah, I forgot about that. There are many Christians who fought most of our wars. Okay, yeah, so that's something that would make sense. But the screen still smells of copper. So we have the priest says nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. So like the priest is there, right? I don't know what smells of copper um, implies. Maybe that's to do with the priest himself. Um, but I think that's to say, right, one is at confession, uh, and the priest is there but has nothing to say. Copper, well, blood is like iron, right? Blood smells ferrous. I like, I'm not sure, right? Doesn't blood not smell coppery, but it smells ferrous? Am I incorrect? Blood has a copper taste. Okay. Okay, like pennies. Okay, gotcha. Then it's blood. So the screen still smells of blood. Like that okay. Cool. Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I'm not always the brightest. um yeah, so that means literally the blood on his hands, the fact that he is killed, um, is standing between him and the priest. You know, he cannot feel like he is saved. He cannot feel like he is um, absolved of his sin uh, because he has, killed. And the priest doesn't absolve his sin either, right? Uh, this once peaceful person, once poet. Um, I love this cold metal, right? This award, this meaningless award for war, presses against him cold, right? Lifeless, dead. Not only does this make us think of the soldier or the poet, maybe if we want to describe him more uh, kindly, um, right? The poet is dying because there's this ghost of a metal. But there's also kind of the fact that the metal itself and the idea of war has this representation of death associated with it. um, and, even on his ribs, right, near to the heart, it is this cold thing next to the heart, which is the warm kind of center of emotion and poetry and this kind of stuff. Um, and right, we have the photo. He is literally like smoking a cigar as he dies. So that's just part of the um, narrative. It does seem like a really interesting symbol, right? I'm sort of still parsing myself what this cigar exactly represents. I use it in my own poetry, so I had an advantage. Well, that's why there's multiple of us, right? Um, if I mean that's the beautiful thing about like conversation and thinking about art together is the more people who have ideas, the more people who contribute to something, we get this like collective interpretation, uh, which you know allows everyone to have a better understanding and a better overall context, which is cool. And then hopefully, if that is well facilitated, also allows each person to take their own interpretation away from it. Ideally, we don't want to place the group interpretation, I think, over the individual. They exist alongside each other. Uh, I don't think we should just defer to popular interpretation, right? We see this with films where like maybe a bunch of people don't get the film in the same way we get the film. That doesn't mean we're wrong, right? I get the sense he was smoking the cigar as he opened his draft notice. So he's having that phantom taste as a memory. I see. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax. Right, so like it kind of has this circular moment where, I mean, we have the photo literal cigar, but then he was also smoking a cigar then, perhaps. So it brings him back to this moment that was like the beginning of his death. Uh that's pretty cool. um I could definitely see that. So like it is in the action of smoking that it's bringing back the memories of earlier parts of his life. Night of the Marrow. The earth was swaying. The girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. So I like how we have the idea of blood, then nicely going into like Night of the Marrow, kind of moving through, like having this connection through like different bodily things. Even having like face, eye, said, right? The mouth. We're sort of going through like the body in a sense in this section, which is kind of cool. The earth was swaying. The girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. So I could see this being like a lover, right? If we're in this place of like remembering, and then we like come back to the present of him thinking about this, and then now we're like remembering again, thinking of a lover, right? Because we do also have, right, eager met lover, and we have this swan, which those aren't the same, but they're similar birds. Get the all caps yes exclamation point. Right, and we have this like white, which has this like purity kind of implication, and just when someone is dying, right? Common to think of a lover, a current lover, or to remember one's first love, or even to remember the love of one's mother, right? These are sort of the common I guess narratives that we think of when someone is dying, that they think of those who love them or the ones that they love, right? The earth was swaying. Night of the marrow. The earth was swaying. Ah, the girl of the village rose from the lilies. I, I feel like lilies, right? There's maybe a specific, symbolic meaning here. I feel like flowers are, you know, extremely common as something that, have a lot of symbolism. I think across lots of cultures and just generally, flowers are given a lot of meaning. They're often associated with purity, renewal, and transience. In Christianity, the lily represents the Virgin Mary's purity. The lily is the national flower of Italy. Okay. um, I mean, these things, right, definitely make sense, right? We have like a Christian interpretation. Rose from the lilies, white as a swan. So we have this like purity, virginity. She is still pure. Maybe it was a recent love or a lost lover. Um, and then like, either someone he was hoping to return to or just someone who he holds really dearly in his mind. I love the earth swaying, right? His vision sort of swimming as he's dying. It almost immediately transitions us from, the night of the marrow and the death and the regret into another place. I'm guessing they were first lovers. Yeah, I think that makes a good amount of sense, right? For them to be first lovers because of the sort of ephemerality, the virgin kind of description. White is a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. White is a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. I love that line. Even just as a description, even if it's just beautiful, right? This swan so gently sitting atop the water. But then, like, we also have, reflects nothing. I think reflection brings us into the idea of memory almost automatically. So it has some of those implications. Water, memory, pools, that kind of stuff. And if we are breaking the surface of memory, that sort of fits with what's literally going on here of her coming into his mind. Possible. It either way it evokes like things within that space. So with the iron in his lung, he is dying. The right-handed soldier, the hand that he would write with, right? Is the pool reflecting nothing about being gleamy? What do you mean gleamy? I'm not sure if I know exactly what the reflecting nothing is about. It could just be dark, right? If we think of like if there's no moon, if it's very dark out, there'd be like no reflection. We're talking about night, generally throughout this. Although he's fading at noon, which is interesting. So it is daytime. So then this night is actually referring to that night. Him and the girl, the earth was swaying. That was a misinterpretation then, right? The memory was the night of marrow. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's what that is. So just a juxtaposition with the swan, maybe. Right, the pool that reflects nothing is like black and empty and just entirely still. And then the swan is like pure bright white on top of it, uh, creates this strong dark light juxtaposition. I mean, that could even imply the poet, the soldier himself, right? If we're talking about this as like a virginal, even like first lover, loss of virginity kind of thing. Um, but him placing himself within that setting as dark and empty and non-reflecting, because we've established him now as, impure, uh, dark, right? We have this like wet of the eye, dark breaking, right, in stanza 2, which does really strongly like allude to this stanza: pool, break, dark. It could also mean the memory means nothing now because he is dying. Yeah, um, that as well, right? The swan is floating atop blackness. The swan is, he is that loss of memory, that fading, that dying. I think all of those things like make sense here. Yeah. So with the iron in his lung, the right-handed soldier reaches with his left, which, you know, this would be the hand that he holds his pen, right? This would be the hand he writes with, keeping that close to himself, right? Reaches with his left, the ink is his own. The poet returns to the circle at noon. And, maybe, right, in reaching with his left, keeping his right to himself, that is in some way symbolically, right, the poet returns, like coming back to this state of peace, right? Of in that moment of death, like still being an artist. We also have a colon, right? No, that's a dot from me and a period, not a colon. It's funny. Sometimes I do that, where I misinterpret things. The poet returns to the circle at noon. Returns to the circle, the watch, the clock. And this is in quotes. So perhaps this is literally spoken, and this is him, composing a final poem. That makes sense to me, right? The ink is his own, so he is in this last moment writing, he is creating, he is invoking something beautiful as he dies, even if he's done something, horrible and unforgivable. He's writing it in his own blood with his left hand. Maybe. Picture, maybe. He reaches with his left, the ink... Oh! His own, his blood. Yeah, the ink is his own. His blood. Thank you. I slept very poorly last night. So then that's interesting. He's writing with his non-dominant hand. This is done sort of. I think I found the most goated community on Twitch. I appreciate that. I think you're a goated poet. This is really good. The ink is his own, so he's writing with the blood of his left hand. The poet returns to the circle at noon. So like this idea has been reclaimed. This thing of him being an artist, a creator of beauty, has come back in this final moment, and he writes the poem, right? Draw a cigar, tragic award, which, evokes the poem itself. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. I have no idea what a nut's iris is. I'm be so real. No idea what this is referring to. No. It is open. Live. Evil and position. Revolt emerge till a lit eager met lover. So yeah, I think this is live, not live, right? Um, we have this like sir. I think this in some way evokes some of like the war stuff, right? But then we say like no, rejecting the idea of war and choosing to live to create art, right? Even if there is evil, revolt against it and choose the beauty of poetry and the lover and the memory. Um, that's just a pure like vibes based reading of that, where I'm like, these words kind of mean these things. Um, Draw a cigar, tragic award. You know, the cigar is that like circle of memory. Of the vibes. Right, tragic award, something given uh, to celebrate something horrible. Um, oh, a nut. A madman. Oh, stun his iris. You've stilled his eyes. You've killed him. What a wild way to say that. That's, I stun a nut's iris. Split his head open. The madman. The nut. Ah, that's, ah. No, it is open. Live. The eye is open, right? I think. Um, like you still have a moment of life. Evil en position. I don't know if position is position in French, but I think the en would be implicative of French. Although maybe you said this is set in a European village, so very well could imply French. Um, right, there is evil, but okay. Um, uh, okay. Evil imposition, revolt, emerge till a lit eager met her lover. Um, and we have this like emerge, rose, uh, right, rose from the lilies. Interesting, like rose from the lilies has this like other sort of meaning of like flower. It's kind of funny. Um, a rose from the lilies is a different flower. Um, which could like double meaning love, red, loss of virginity, lilies, white, pure virginity. Uh, but also rose as an action. I Yeah, that's cool. Um, anyway, revolt emerge till a lit eager met lover. Talk. This is a really well scribed piece. Right. Yeah, it I mean, I love a poem that has more arrows going between different parts, right? I love a poem that is interconnected and throughout. And it's so cool, right? We describe this guy's entire state of mind as he's dying, and then we get the poem that he speaks as to describe the entire state of mind, which has been told as a poem. So really, this is a poem, right? What a cool, what a cool. Did the stream glitch? Probably. Ugh, yeah, it did. Man. Okay, I think we're back. I think we're so back. Um Chinny's been having some issues lately. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that. I think I might have to to do some like reset the Wi-Fi thing at some point, or something to do with like, its cache, or I don't know. But yeah, we're back. It looks like we're back. Stream did have an issue. I don't know what part it froze at, but I was gushing about how this is a poem. Uh, this I watch an ad. Oh, that's messed up. Um, well, I can wait a second. I guess you can't even hear me. Uh, uh, I'll wait. Freaking ads, freaking Twitch. It's so annoying. This is the the struggle. I can stretch though. I can stretch and that'll be good. Ad gives me a chance to stretch. Okay. Oh, man. You're back. Okay. Everyone's back. Dude. And then it's gonna like ping everyone on Discord again. It's so frustrating. Yep. Two-Thirds Lotus is now live. um that's a terrifying emote, Nikki. That's ugh, wild. I don't like that. I also did a stretch and hydrate. Excellent, excellent. These are the things to do. Okay, so I was saying, Bushka, that I just love how this poem is. It's a poem. Like, I think this is the most like core central part of the work to me, is a poem within this poem. And this poem is describing the rest of this narrative, this scene, right? That is, told poetically, right? And all of that together makes like the larger structure of poem. Like that is so it's so cool that it's like self-referential in that capacity. And I think that really contributes to this like circular clock noon memory kind of thing where everything is, pointing at each other and it's like vague and fluid. I really enjoy that about the work. Um, it's such a cool structure, right? Uh, and then it ends, right? Talk. He's dead. um, right? It's like, yeah, very, very cool. I'm gonna read the whole thing again, just now that we've like, I think we've parsed the narrative, like the actual what the scene is. Uh, there's also like cool sound things happening that I've been noticing. Um, like we have this like wax draft, like there's some nice, alliteration, screen smells. Uh, but here's noon again. Uh, for as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. Talk. The ghost of a metal presses cold on his ribs. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draught that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. For as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye he broke in the dark. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. Talk. Night of the marrow. The earth was swaying, the girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. Talk. Right, we have like of the village from the lilies. There's these like cool sound things happening in this. I love that each talk, like it's basically like a second, right? So this is like the life flash his own. The poet returns to the circle at noon. Talk. Is talk. Is stream crashing again? It went red. Anyway, hopefully not. Yeah, it did. Oh my gosh, I hate this. I hate this. Why is stream sucking? Okay, it's good. Like sometimes I see it go red and I don't know, right? Um it pisses me off. Draw a cigar, tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open, live, evil in position. Revolt emerge, tell a lit, eager. Revolt emerge, tell a lit, eager. Matt, her lover. Talk. I think there's something interesting here with like lit. Um, like this implies in some way the cigar. I don't know if there's some connection there. It would be really cool if there was some brand of cigars, that were like egret cigars or whatever, and that was like a specific reference to that thing. But I don't know. Otherwise, lit is just the radiance of the lover, right? Um, talk. This poem's great. This poem's really cool. I like this quite a lot. Yeah. Um, so circular, so much going on. Uh I would love to tell you one small thing about the last stanza, if and when you want to hear it. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna pull anything new from that stanza because uh there is a lot, I think there's a lot that translation probably doesn't do justice to. Uh there's so much nuance here, right? So if you want to give, some of your context, thoughts, explanation, if you have other questions too, um, I always love like the questions, even if it's like, what's your favorite part of the poem? Like, I feel like those often lead to good conversations. But yeah, you do have questions. Perfect. Any questions, any context? I think it's now open for that since I've given at least my thoughts on like the meaning of this poem and the interpretation uh in this moment of death. There's more I could have said about, maybe the sound and whatever, but I think we've done it pretty good justice, right? Yeah. Wanted to hear your thoughts on the title. Noon. Noon is a palindrome. It goes noon this way and it goes noon this way. I think there's something cool about that, right? That the title itself has this symmetry to it. As we're talking about time and him like remembering his life, I think noon is. Wait. No, no, no way. Draw. You did palindromic lines. Oh, okay. Okay, Bushka, you're awesome. Oh my gosh. Draw a cigar, tragic award. Draw a cigar, tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. Dude. Nah, that's so cool. No, it is open, live. No, it is open, live. Revolt, emerge, tell a lit egret met lover. And it's so okay. And that means it's also palindromic in the original language. So you probably. So does that mean you Okay, that's crazy. If you wrote a poem, it is palindromic in both the original and the translation, you're cracked. You're cracked. You're a way better poet than me. Holy shit. Oh my god. Oh, dude, that's so cool. Revolt, emerge, telelit, eager, met, lover. Oh, okay. Oh, oh my gosh. Okay, title. Title's great. No complaints about the title. Um, that's funny that the first thing I thought you said like, what do I think about the title? I'm like, oh, it's palindromic. That's cool. Um, not even realizing that was. Uh, I love the title. Um, wow. Oh, oh, wow. um, dude, that's freaking dope. Okay, I love the title. That's your answer on that. And I love this. Draw a cigar, tragic a word. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it's open, live. Evil en position. Revolt, emerge. Till lit, eager met lover. Yeah, no wonder that took you a month. That's so. And like the fact that it points to all of this, I'm genuinely like blown away. I've written like one palindromic line. Um, but I think even then it was only the words that were palindromic, like not on a letter level. Um, thanks, it means a lot. Yeah, no, this is so sick. And to do that in two languages? Cracked. Cracked. um, yeah, I don't know. This is so cool. I'm like, dude, I'm like just nerding out about this. That's so sick. Draw a cigar, tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open, live. Evil imposition, revolt emerge till a lit eager met lover. Talk. Like in that last moment, he gets this like entire full circle, experience of life. Forward, back, beginning to end, cyclical, and then it ends. I love the cyclical nature of time and memories, going backwards, forwards. The time goes forwards, but our memories go backwards. That's what inspired me to write this. Yeah, I mean, what a perfect way to capture that concept, right? Because like the palindrome, right? That we have this perception of time forward, this perception of time backward. Yeah. He became the watch, right? He became time itself. And like that's so powerful within the story, right? Um for his end to be this like masterfully sort of crafted utterance, the kind of artistic culmination of the events of his life as to reclaim this sort of suffering, this loss, this way of life that he did not want to live. Um, I think that's very powerful on like a story level, the way that that's executed. I don't know that anyone can ever top that. I mean, that's the beauty of art. There's always someone who will come and top that, right? um, my only thing I might change is the talks before the end to ticks. Ah, yeah, we could do tick, 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 talk, right? Um, and I think, right, if we have the tick as the second hand, and then the talk is the minute, hour, and second landing together, right? That's why we get different tones on the clock. Because when they like move together, it creates that louder sound. So that could also imply like the striking of noon, the final end. Um, in which case you might say, for as he lay fading toward noon, right? Where then fading toward noon would then tell us that this is noon, right? That could be a cool change. Also, like fading toward noon is maybe a cool way to say that, right? That's actually interesting, and I didn't think about it. In Bengali, we just have one sound for what clock watch sounds like. That definitely could have been an improvement. Yeah, and there's always things to change. Yeah, we have ticks, we have talks. I think those are the big ones, right? I don't know if we have other clock sound words. Yeah. um, yeah, ticks and talk. Could be a vibe. Do you have any other questions, Pushka? Any other thoughts? I think TikTok is pretty much it in English. Yeah. Or if Nikki, you have thoughts or questions, or anyone else really. Man, I can't believe I like missed the palindrome. Like looking at that for so long. What did you think about the central character's overall journey? Does the poem grasp his internal and external journey both? Yeah, right. We have him laying and bleeding out, and then we have him like we have him like laying. We have him with the medal. We place him in the moment, right, of dying, um, like very quickly. Then we have like the remembrance. We have this idea that both has him killing someone in the present, but then like thinking of something religious and spiritual and going outside of that. Um, we have, uh, you know, him remembering like this beautiful, pure memory. Um, we have him, you know, there dying on the ground, and then this last act. Um, and then this last act, I mean, it's such a, like, in terms of the journey, right? It's such a vindication of, like, this stanza in particular, right? Where, like, he's done something horrible, um, and he's fought, and he's, like, kind of lost his artistic way. His quill has been broken, um, but then the ink is his own, right? He has this moment, again, to create, to remember beauty. And so I think it also then speaks to, you know, beauty against the backdrop of death. It speaks to, like, you know, in that most difficult, that most crucial moment, that the sort of true self, right, his true self as an artist, persists rather than him being, you know, violent in that dying moment. I think that's a very powerful thing for that character. Um, yeah. Does the poem grasp his internal and external journey both? Yeah. I think I think it definitely does that, where it really beautifully navigates memory and present, and even like blurs those things a little bit, where um on a first couple reads it's sort of unsure, but then you parse through it and understand what's going on. um yeah uh yeah, I think it works on both of those, and I think the story itself is compelling, and powerful. So I think it's hitting on like all of those uh sort of cylinders, if you will. Yeah. Like, we can understand that he's dying, we can understand that he killed someone, we can understand that he's like fighting for his country. Um we get that he was a poet, we get that he's Christian and religious. We get this idea of purity and love, right? I think it's all there. Thank you for sharing. I really enjoyed this. Yeah, I enjoyed it too. It's a really impressive work. Thank you so very much. This feels so good to hear. I'm genuinely touched by the analysis and the feedback. I'm glad. I'm glad you were. This is meaningful. Uh, to to have me yap about your work. um. Yeah. Um. Oh man. I like woke up and immediately streamed, and now like I'm sitting and my back is all stiff. Oh my gosh. Do you have other thoughts, other questions, other things? I'm welcome. You can just throw them at me if you have a lot. If you don't, that's cool too. Um, Bushka plays Ginny always makes me feel like an actual poet. Why do you need me for that, Nikki? You are an actual poet. You're as actual a poet as the rest of us. You're as actual a poet as, you know, all of us. Um, the Sir I stun a nut's iris is definitely a confession made to a priest. Yeah, yeah. I see. That's the Sir. Mm. That's so cool that makes sense. Right? He's the Sir. Um, yeah. Yeah. That does make sense. Now it is open, you know. No, it is open. Live is sort of like this. Draw a cigar. Tragic award is sort of this stanza, right? They all point to a respective part of the poem, right? And then we circle back on the beginning at the end, right? And I wanted the image to be love in a time of war. Yeah, art created and um, yeah, revolt emerged. Till a lit eager met lover. Yeah, and like mm, right, and doing war, but holding the idea of love and the lover and these values and art within one's mind. Uh, I think that's beautiful, right? It places war on like a very human level. And I think this is the best way to talk about war, is to talk about people and the way that people lose and the way that the individual is still a lover and is still an artist, even when they're a soldier. Um, the way that war on a broad level, the king, seal, and the draft, right, don't care um, about those things, but they are no less real. Uh, I think there's value in humanizing the soldier as an individual, and I also think this poem writes about war without glorifying, right? Because it's fundamentally pretty uh, tragic, right? I think the way you look at poems is something that is genuinely so interesting. To see how your mind works, repeated reading brings out more meanings, and you formed some really cool interpretations that added to what I thought, which is the beauty of poetry. Yeah, it is. And I always say that, um, like time, funnily enough, time that we spend with something, the time that we engage with something, is what allows us, right, a deeper understanding. Uh, I could read this poem on my own. I could read it once and I could say, okay, that's neat. That last stanza was kind of weird. And then what, like, move on, right? Or you can read it again and again. And I do think every time we read something, every time we continue to engage with a piece of art, uh, we discover new things both about the piece and about ourselves. We learn about ourselves through the way we interpret, right? Like you say, interesting the way my mind works. Um, and that's the most important thing to me, is this idea of taking time to engage with the things that other people create and care about. Because we live in a society where that feels like a very alien, very uncommon thing to do, uh, where like people be scrolling on TikTok. I'd be scrolling on well, I guess like YouTube Shorts maybe, but like um, filling our attention with meaningless things and flitting around like moths at little lights. And why don't we just like slow down and consider and think and uh if I get, if one person watches this stream and then goes and sits down with another poem, like outside of this context, and allows themselves to like slow down and appreciate something and appreciate beauty and like learn something about art and themselves and the world or whatever, um, right, without me being here, then I've like I've done something good, right? Um, I'm confident that, you know, taking the time to think and being slow and critical is like a good thing. Um, so that's what you know, you know, time. um, right. And I think like in a world that's so fast, like people barely even acknowledge that taking more time with something can be good, you know? So, and by showing me piecing through it and like sometimes not getting it and needing someone else to say, no, blood smells like copper, or, you know, to be nudged toward the palindrome, or to not read the ink is his own as blood, right? Um, uh, like that also shows that like everyone is, like I'm not any different than anyone else. Like anyone can sit down with a piece of art and just think about it for a long time and like figure stuff out. Like I'm not doing anything particularly unique or special to me, right? By analyzing poetry. Like anyone can do this, I think, you know? Um and like I think showing that on a place like Twitch is that's a good setting for that. Oh, and the Ghost of a Medal is the tragic award. Yeah, yeah, the tragic award. Yeah, that's that one definitely. This whole thing like just points to the different spots in this first stanza. Um, yeah, really great. Um, yeah, like the fact that this goes and references the entire work is crazy, absolutely crazy. right? um, I got on my soapbox for a second there. I'll stop waxing. It's hard to keep a poet from waxing poetic about the things they care about, right? Um, as you said, participative dissection. I like that. Yeah, I've been really big on that word, participative, or participatory. I think is my preferred version of that. Right. Um, that right to invite other people to participate is this very like uh, communally oriented, you know, collective together by through the participation of many. I think we understand more. Um, that almost sounds very like democratic. Um, but yeah, collective participation. We learn more. We grow more. We discover things about each other and ourselves. Hi Ray. We just we just read like a crazy poem. You would have really liked this one, Ray. Look at this. Look at these lines. These lines are palindromes. Draw a cigar tragic award. Draw a cigar tragic award. So I stun a nut's iris. Or sir, I stun a nut's iris. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open, live, evil imposition. And Ray, and Ray, Ray, this isn't the original language. Bushka originally wrote this in Bengali and then translated it and preserved the palindromic structure. I'm like I'm I could just tweak out so hard about these lines and the fact of this is like an active translation. Um, yeah, it's insane. It's like bonkers. It's yeah. Um, Bushka Ray is also a writer and does a lot of translation between English and Spanish and translates a lot of Spanish poetry. I feel like y'all might have things to talk about, as individuals of the translating ilk. Um, yeah, I'm obsessed with this, Bushka. Really, really, really impressive. Bushka is dedicated, right? Where's the blushing emoji? I feel like you saying that is, you know, implicative of enough of the attempt. um, you use that one. Is that your blush Oh, it is an uwu helmet. I didn't even realize. I just see it as a helmet. I think you like stick it in like in between colons or something on Twitch. I don't know how Twitch works. Um, yeah, you get what I mean. I do get what you mean. Um, yeah, freaking so cool. Uh, anyway, I think that's all for this poem. Unless you have other thoughts you'd like to uh, extract from my willing and open mind, Bushka or anyone else. Um, I think we've had a decent discussion on this work. Um, could probably sit and talk about it longer. um, but I'm out of original words, so there's that. Um, this was an amazing experience. I'm inspired to create more. I'm glad that this helps people. I think it's cool that I get to do this. Thank you so much for submitting it. It's a very it's from Bengali, yes. It's a very I'd imagine like precarious thing to send one's art to like, you know, random ass person on the internet, uh like to entrust one's art, right? So I really deeply appreciate you sending it, and affording me the opportunity to read it, right? uh I appreciate that. And here again is Noon, a palindrome by Bushka Place. For as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. Talk. The ghost of a metal presses cold on his ribs. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draught that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. For as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye he broke in the dark. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. Talk. Night of marrow. The earth was swaying. The girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. Talk. So with the iron in his lung, the right-handed soldier reaches with his left. The ink is his own. The poet returns to the circle at noon. Talk. Draw a cigar. Tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open. Live. Evil and position. Revolt. Emerge. Tell a lit, eager, matte lover. Talk. Okay, something else I noticed reading it this time. Like you have this like nothing happening at the end of both of these stanzas in a row, and it just creates this really excellent like defeated like uh just like this just immense feeling of loss, right? We're implying, the impenetrability, the emptiness of death, the lack of forgiveness, the loss of the lover, like nothing, right? Is really, really cool. And then in this stanza, right, we switch to the creation of something, right? And we have this like linguistic thing throughout where like, iron and copper, right? We have broke and we have breaks. Like all of these words are just always kind of pointing to each other. Even metal makes us think of the metals that we have later. We have like the blood and we have the marrow, his own ink. We have like just so many, like the words are so like thematically consistent throughout the entire work, where I don't know, like everything, right? We have, like we said earlier, the wet and the dark, pointing toward like this stanza later. Man, it's just so like there's just so much going on, right? I'm gonna read it again. Uh, it's just noon. For as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. Talk. The ghosts of a metal presses cold on his ribs. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draft that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. Quill, right? Like we have like the quill and we have the birds happening later. Like even those like every word feels like it's able to, in this very like fluid, right, non-linear, like ephemeral kind of sense, like point to something else that's going on in the poem. Uh yeah, yeah. Um the words just all exist within like a really consistent space. I don't I've never thought about describing a poem in that way. But where all the words feel close and interrelated. Maybe I need to come up with a term for that. Forwards and backwards, even with the use of words, using it twice in a similarly different way. Right. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. Um, so cool. um, Noon. I'm gonna try to get through this poem, to read it again, because like I'm genuinely so stoked about it that I just keep noticing things that just make me like nerd out. Um, Noon. For as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. The ghost of a medal presses cold on his ribs. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draft that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. For as he lay thinking, use lay, fading, lay, thinking. We're not going to make it through this poem, I swear to God. Noon. For as he lay fading it, like you do it everywhere. It's like it's every single word in the poem like is pointing toward something else. It's so cool. Noon. For as he lay fading at noon, he became the watch. Talk. The ghost of a medal presses cold on his ribs. He tastes the cigar, remembers the king's wax, the draft that broke his quill for a blade. Talk. For as he lay thinking of the madman's split face, he feels the wet of the eye he broke in the dark. The priest said nothing, but the screen still smells of copper. Talk. Night of the marrow. The earth was swaying. The girl of the village rose from the lilies, white as a swan that breaks the surface of a pool that reflects nothing. Talk. So with the iron in his lung, the right-handed soldier reaches with his left. The ink is his own. The poet returns to the circle at noon. Talk. Draw a cigar. Tragic award. Sir, I stun a nut's iris. No, it is open. Live, evil and position. Revolt emerged, till a lit, eager, met lover. Talk. I love that the last word he says is lover. Right. That's Noon. That's Noon by Bushka Plays. Man. So much going on in the poem. I just just everything. Like, um, what a structural accomplishment, right? Um, and then just to have, like, now looking at this art again with, him and the swan and the medals and the clock and the sword and the broken seal, right? um this lover over him, like, yeah, really really cool. uh yeah, Pavov. This VOD probably will not go on YouTube. Actually, the YouTube stream might have stayed up the whole time, so I might be able to download it from there. Um, so I might be able to put an edited version on YouTube because I really like this poem, and it would be good to keep the VOD. But the Twitch broke like 3 times, so um, there's that issue of it's hard to stitch those back together, right? Afterward. Um, yeah, thank you, Bushka, for sending that. Always a feat to share one's work. Uh, I appreciate your willingness, openness, bravery, and of course your writing as well. No, thank you, and to your community too. Well, then you're thanking yourself if you're thanking the community, because you're the community, Bushka, as is everyone else who's a part of it. So I win. uh, I get the last laugh of thank yous. But I mean, I'm also the community, right? So I don't know. In a sense, it evens out, and it's a tie of thanks where we collectively thank all. Whatever. Did I miss it? You did miss a pretty killer poem, uh, uh, by Bushka. Um, I uh, I am uncertain if I'm reading something else, I guess. Uh, I am uncertain about that, but because I'm very very sleepy, so you probably missed it. I guess is what I'm thinking. Uh, yeah, I think I might just wrap up stream here because I was up till 3 a.m. last night. Uh, and that sucks. Um, and uh, yeah, yeah. Pepper, I have been listening to a little bit of what was the musician you recommended? What you recommended me some. What's her name? See, I'm not even sane enough to remember that right now. Ah, Tina Turner. Yeah, yeah. I have listened to some Tina Turner. I have not watched uh, Mad Max yet, though it's been on my mind to do so. Um, and yeah, she's pretty dope. Uh, she's pretty like, you know, like, not good when a poet runs out of words. That's all I'm saying. It doesn't work very well. It's not my preferred state to be in. I prefer to have words to say, and I think I'm tired where I don't have any more words. So since I don't have any more words, stream, that doesn't really facilitate a live stream. Uh, that is to say, that I'm ending stream now. I think. Um. Uh. Yeah. That's what's happening. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for the poem, Mushka. Thank you, Nikki, for your excellent thoughts during that poem. Uh, Yeah. Uh, I will go rest and work on making a language for fun, because that's just fun, easy writing, and I'm always chill to do that. Um, to make languages. But for the rest of you, keep making art you love. That's an order. Maybe I need to have something that I say at the end that's to do with like slowing down and taking the time to appreciate art. Maybe that would be a better kind of outro phrase, right? I don't know. Good night, dude. It's like 2 p.m. It's afternoon out here. Um. Anyway, bye.